Hi, I'm Gigi, an ex-Amazon senior leader and bar raiser. Now, if you're lucky and you have done well at an online assessment or in early rounds of interviews, you'll get invited to the Amazon interview panel or Amazon interview loop. This is, in most cases, the final round of the Amazon interview process. And knowing what to expect at this final hurdle will, I promise, help set you up for success. So the problem is, when you look for this information online, you're likely to get well-intentioned but misleading information. And really that's because most of the people providing this information are doing so from a very limited perspective of the Amazon interview panel. Maybe they are in the tech space and they've only interviewed on tech. Maybe they're someone who's more junior and they've only had exposure to junior interviewing, or maybe they're a recruiter and they have only really hired for certain specific roles. The truth is, the experience is really variable and pretty much based on your level and job family. But lucky for you, you found me, and as a bar raiser, I've interviewed from entry to director level and across dozens of job families, tech and non-tech. So please do pay attention to what follows, and hopefully I should cover your use case at some point. So let's start with the one basic which is true for everyone. The Amazon interview loop or Amazon interview panel requires you to meet with a number of Amazonians. That's the one consistent. You won't meet them all at the same time in the same interview. It's a series of interviews, one after the other, that can happen on one day or spread across a couple of days. That's part of the one consistent. Now we get into deviations. So how many people will you meet? That varies hugely, depending primarily on the level of role that you're applying for. The most junior of you may meet as few as 2 people on your Amazon interview panel, and the most I've ever heard of at a director level was about 9. So on average, as an entry, I think you can expect to meet maybe 3 to 4, mid-level 5 to 6, and then senior levels 6 to 9. So then what format will the interview take? Well, again, this varies, and mainly by the type of role that you're applying for. Technical roles will very often have both functional and behavioral elements tested, either in each interview or by dedicating interviews to one or the other. Oh yes, sorry. By functional interviews, I mean questions that seek to get an understanding of your technical skills or knowledge. And by behavioral, I mean questions that are focused on understanding your ability to raise the bar on the Amazon leadership principles. Now, non-technical roles tend to be focused only on the behavioral elements, but there are some exceptions to this, surprise, surprise, where maybe an extra practical element is introduced. So a couple of examples of that would be maybe brand managers who are given a case study to simulate how they would manage a customer's account. UX designers are sometimes required to do like a product design case study or portfolio reviews. And then another one would be finance. Like finance people might be required to do a SQL or Excel test. There will be plenty of others, and because there are thousands of roles in Amazon, I don't know all of them, so please don't ask me. But do make sure you check with your recruiter if there will be any practical elements of your Amazon interview panel. Okay, so for the next variable, who will be on your panel? It's a little bit more consistent than some of the other things. So normally you should expect to see your hiring manager on the interview panel. Most of you will, but there are some exceptions to this. So for high volume type roles like brand managers, the roles are just so standard and the requirements so consistent. Any manager from that unit would be able to make good judgment of who is raising the bar, even if they weren't going to directly line manage that role. So quite often in those roles, you won't see your hiring manager. There will be a manager there. So other people that you can expect are other direct reports of your hiring manager, but also people from peer teams. So it could be a direct peer of your hiring manager or one of your peers from an equivalent team. You may also have your manager's manager on your panel. And of course, you will have a bar raiser. Or will you? Okay, so, Gigi. So a significant recent development is that for a number of junior roles, currently only L4s, I believe, some of you won't ever actually meet your bar raiser. They won't interview you, but you will still have a bar raiser. So the bar raiser takes part in a pre-briefing about the role and then leads the debrief to review your notes, but they won't ever have actually met you. It's crazy, huh, right? So I've got to be honest, it's not a process I'd be keen on as a bar raiser, but I do totally see the merit in terms of its scalability. And having never met the candidate, it takes the objectivity requirements of a bar raiser, I think, to another level, because then it's just the notes and the conversations that you have with the other interviewers, not any kind of bias that you may have introduced yourself. So the next question I get is, can you forget about the leadership principles that you have already been asked in the early rounds of interviews? Well, my experience is no. The smart hiring manager front loads the most important leadership principles into the early rounds as a high bar filter mechanism. If the candidate can't impress you for the most critical leadership principles, then genuinely you are better off to find it out as high up the funnel as possible, rather than waste 15 to 20 hours of Amazon time in the Amazon interview panel just to find that out. Now, to be clear, there's no policy for this approach, but it is just one of those best practices that tends to be passed from experienced hiring managers to new hiring managers. So don't hold me to account for it, but it is best practice. So on to how many questions you'll get asked. I get this question so much. The truth is, I'm sorry to say, it is impossible for me to predict. Like the other variables, there's just so much deviation in what can happen in an individual interview. Honestly, primarily it's driven by how long you spend giving each of your examples, and I talk about this in another video in my channel. And obviously kind of the goal that the interviewer is looking for. But there really is no number I can share with you with any high level of confidence. So honestly, your best strategy is to have 2 examples ready for each leadership principle. And if you can get your recruiter to help you whittle that number of leadership principles down to a smaller number that you should focus on, obviously so much the better. There are 16. That's obviously a lot of examples to come up with. So that's it. If I missed anything that you'd like to know about the Amazon interview panel, please do just let me know in the comments. And of course, please spend like a millisecond giving this video a like so that other candidates who would benefit from my channel can do so. Now, what you need to do is click on this link here and go and grab yourself one of my free Amazon Interview Wiz Academy Customer Obsession Masterclasses. Watch that and you will nail every single customer obsession question asked of you at your Amazon interview. Or if you'd like to do that later, check out this video here for more great Amazon interview bar raiser tips on interview strategy.